Hi everybody, what's happening? I am Adam, this is Go To Outdoors, and welcome back to another one. Today I am kind of just relaxing in the backyard. Didn't go out on a big adventure today, didn't do any foraging, because I did some foraging the last time I was out at the wildlife refuge with my dad, looking for those squirrels and doves the other day. And right next to where we parked the truck, found something a little cool. There was actually a few trees that were full of these. These are Chinese chestnuts. And I'm going to try and roast a couple of those today. I've had them before, it was a long time ago, but there's a couple tips and tricks that you need to know before you can try this. Don't just go out and harvest some of these and then throw them in your oven and expect them to work out. They will explode and you will not be happy. But there's a trick to get rid of that problem here in a second. But first, want to go over a little bit about these. So of course, like I was saying, this is and I'm dropping them. This is a Chinese chestnut. It's a fairly large one. They come in various sizes here. Various sizes and shapes, as you can see. Some small ones, some medium ones, and some big ones. Interrupted by a little downy woodpecker. He's trying to sneak in there and get him something to eat. And I don't blame him, because that's exactly what I'm trying to do today. The first thing I do when I get home is you put them in a container and you want to let them sit for a little while, because these are not pesticide ridden, covered in all kinds of gunk like that from a farm or from a factory that you typically buy these from. They will have some bugs in them. So let them sit, let them get out of there, because once they fall off the tree, that's when the grubs start to come out. They go into their whole phase where they pupate, become beetles and whatnot, but that's not why we're here. But all I'm saying is you will have some. And I initially had probably twice as many chestnuts as I have now, and I'm going to show you why. Yeah, let's take a look at this. It wasn't good. Prepare yourself. This is kind of funky. Well, this is exactly what you do not want to see when you're cleaning your chestnuts. I left them in a bowl for an extra couple days, and you really don't want to know how many of these came out, but okay, so you probably do. I'm gonna go ahead and film how many of these came out just out of the batch that I had left after the first cleaning. Yeah, so that is just the ones that are currently out of this most recent crop. But now that you have that problem dealt with, you should have some decent nuts left over to work with. So I probably have about 2.5, 3 pounds. It's probably about 80 to 90 nuts. Blue jays are back. I can't get away from them, and there's a heron back here, so if you hear a squawk, sorry, it's just the nature of the neighborhood. But what you do need to do is, once you make sure all the grubbies are out, you get rid of the bad ones. If you honestly have them and you have deer in your area or squirrels or whatever, just throw the empties, the ones you were going to throw away, just chuck them in the backyard. Squirrels love them, woodchucks love them, and the deer are going to crunch them down too once they're outside of their shells. I'm going to put a picture in here of what a Chinese chestnut looks like when it's inside of its shell, because they are nasty. They are the spikiest, most terrible things. They hurt trying to get them out if you don't know what you're doing, and I didn't know what I'm doing, so typically what I just do is I step on them and kind of push my feet apart to pop the nuts out of the hulls. But here's a picture of what those Chinese chestnuts look like inside of the hulls. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to need to do before you try and get these into the oven or under the grill or into, over a fire, however you feel like roasting them, what I'm going to be doing in this episode is roasting them in an oven, just because that's the easiest, that's the cleanest, it's the most foolproof, and I happen to be foolish when it comes to this kind of thing, so I want it simple. Simple is good. So the first thing you have to do is you actually have to cut the shell of the nut. So I'm going to throw on my GoPro and kind of give you a point of view of how you do that. So 1 second. Okay, so I have actually gotten these started. I've got a couple cut and scored already, but essentially, that one snuck in there. You don't want that one. That one's got a hole in it, so chuck that one out. for the critters, because that hole was a grub, and the grubs are no good. But anyway, what I've got here is just a small hook bill knife. This one's older than me by far. It's belonged to my grandfather, so I don't know if Stubby's still around or whatever. It's been sharpened all to get out several times. It's starting to get ground down. This was probably a legit hook bill at one point, but now it's just kind of straight. There's 3 different ways that I have seen to get the shells, the hulls, scored so that they don't explode when they're in the oven or roasting, because this is kind of like a big kernel of corn. It's completely airtight. If you just heat it up, it's gonna pop, and you're gonna have pop chestnuts instead of, you know, popcorn, and you don't want that because it's a mess to clean up and it's just not fun. So we score the outside shell of this in 1 of 3 different ways. The first way I saw it done was just, you know, not a lot of these have kind of a flat side and a more curved side. On the curved side, I've seen people just kind of score from one side all the way to the other. So you start it, get the point of your knife in there, and just bring it just under the shell, straight across, just to open it up there, like so. It's probably not the cleanest cut, but I don't want to cut myself. So I wasn't using as much pressure as I probably should have. The second way that you can have it done is I've seen it on the same side, you know, the more rounded side. It's kind of an X pattern. So I'm going to try and do that here real quick. And on that note, a lot of the commercial like cutters, like the presses that I've seen that kind of pre-cut the hull for you so you can go on to the next step, which is soaking, which we'll get to. They leave this little X pattern. It's not really a big X, it just kind of opens it up just a little bit. That center's kind of tough there. So that one is done in an X, and we'll see how that one turns out. I did a couple more of these that are already done, so we're gonna pop that in there with the rest. And the last way that I've seen it done, nope, that one's still plenty firm. You got to make sure you press on some that look a little iffy, because if they're soft, they're no good. You're going to want to toss those out for all the critters. But like I was saying, the third way I've seen this done is actually what's called the clamshell method. And this is the method that I tried before that worked the best for me. And you start kind of on one edge of the top here. Make sure your knife gets in there. And you just go around the top of, I guess, the flat section here, and go to the other edge. So it goes all the way around. And what this does is when it's roasting, it kind of pops up and out like that, and it makes it really easy to get that nugget of flesh out of the inside of the hull here. So that is actually how I am going to do the rest of these. And we are back inside. So what we have, of course, are the chestnuts. Let's turn you around. So you can see now that we have all of them ready to go. They're all scored in one manner or another. All of them have their cuts. And what you want to do is have a bowl big enough that you can completely cover them in water, which we're going to do right now. And it's full. And of course we have a couple of floaters, but you know, floaters happen. What can I say? So now that they're, you know, underwater, we're going to cover them up like so. Just going to take a rag, cover the whole thing up, and if it gets wet, no big deal. Just make sure it's covered up, and boom, set it in some place where you can let it sit overnight. So you only really have to technically soak them for about 2 hours. I'm going to soak them overnight. I soaked them for 2 hours last time I made them, and they came out a little bit dry. I also probably roasted them a bit too hot in temperature. But this time, it's another experiment. We're going to make this one work. So I'm going to soak them overnight, and it's going to do 2 things. It's going to rehydrate the flesh inside of the hulls. It's going to, you know, make it easier for the hulls to come off, because it'll have, you know, more steam when they're roasting to help pop that off. And the third thing it's going to do is kill any grubs that might be left, because you don't want them in the finished product. But I'm going to let these sit overnight, and I'll get back with you first thing in the morning. It is officially the next day, and let's take a look at what we've got going on now. Before we get started putting everything into the pan, let's go ahead and get the oven started here. Going to go ahead and preheat to 350 degrees. There we go. Oh, and yeah, make sure you empty out the oven first. That's important. All right, so there is our big bowl full of chestnuts. They have been soaking overnight, and behind it I have a large dish that I'm going to be putting those into. So first, let me get these drained off, and then they're going to go in there. So once you make sure you get them into the pan here, spread them out, make sure there's none that are on top of each other. And what I'm going to try on this is, on some of these, I'm going to throw a little bit of pink salt, just to see if that changes the flavor a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put them on the smaller ones on this side. Now we're going to go ahead and get them into the oven. We have reached 350 degrees. Again, like I said before, this is a convection oven, so 325 here is 350 in the oven. So let's go ahead and open it up. I like to put them on the center rack because it makes it nice and even. And then I'm going to put 35 minutes on the timer. Alright, that means everything is done. Those are looking good. Let's get these out, get them on the counter. Okay, as you can see, they have opened up quite nicely. Here's one of the ones that had the X pattern. A lot of these have the clamshell. And the ones that are kind of right down the middle, they split open nicely as well. So now that these are in this state, have one more step. They are cooling off while they're still warm. Gonna want to get that big bowl out again, and we're going to be putting them in here. So let's get that done right quick. Okay, now they're all in the bowl. And like I was saying before, if you cut them right, sometimes the meat will fall right out of the shell. So that's what happened on this one. So that's pretty cool. But once these are all covered up, or in the bowl, they're still warm, kind of want to cover them up and let them sit for probably at least another 15 or 20 minutes. So give them a quick push, kind of separate a little bit of the holes off the flesh a little bit, and we'll be back with you in a few. Okay, so our 15 minutes have passed, and now let's take a look at what we have going for us. Everything is looking pretty good in there. A nice steam, kind of moist feeling inside of the old the old bowl right there. Can't even talk right now. Let's get them back into the pan. Okay, well, what you can see is that a lot of these are looking pretty good. Some should pop right out of their hulls here. So actually, let's pop this one out and see how it tastes. Give me 1 second. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at this bad boy. Pretty easy to crack that one, and pops right out of the shell. Nice and clean. Now, one thing to mention is that some of these, being that they were wild harvested, foraged up, some might have a couple grubs in there. Some of these others, I can almost guarantee you, like this one, just based on the color that turned out once everything was roasted, it's not overly done. Chances are that this one, yeah, definitely. This one definitely had some grub action going through it, both sides. So it's unfortunate. I'm not going to eat that one. It's going in the yuck bucket. So the one that I did have, it looks nice and good. You can crack it, you can split it. It's going to come apart pretty easily, kind of in sections, and they're fairly easy to split, fairly easy to just take apart. Super tender. These ones actually stayed pretty moist and tender, so. Very mild flavor. Got a little bit of sweetness to it. The ones that have a little salt, let's try one of them real quick. Just want to see a little salt left on there. The ones with a little salt are said to be a tad bit sweeter. So let's try that one. So. Not too bad though. I actually kind of prefer just the regular plain old vanilla roasted by itself. Good flavor. Like I said, texture's not too dry on these ones. The first time I tried roasting these, I didn't soak them overnight. I only soaked them for about an hour, and they got too dry. I also roasted them at a higher temperature based on the recommendation of something I saw online. So I did it lower, did it for longer this time around, and they turned out really good. I'm probably going to go out and try and find some more of these if the squirrels and all the other critters haven't gotten to them here in the next week or so. But hey, all in all, I call this a win for something that I just picked up in a parking lot where I went hunting. Anyway, I was doing a little bit of research while these were in the oven, and there are a couple other things that you could do with these once they are roasted. I've seen a couple folks actually chop them up, put them on salads, which actually isn't that bad of an idea. I've been eating a lot more salad recently, and I'm not mad at that. I'm really enjoying salads. I can't explain it. Never been a big salad guy before, but that's besides the point. Another thing that a lot of folks do with these is they kind of chop them up and they throw them into a soup or a stew or something a little bit thicker. I think that these could add a little bit of body and that depth of flavor to certain things, like a wild game stew or a pot roast or something like that, or even putting chestnuts into your Thanksgiving stuffing. I'm gonna have to find some more chestnuts before Thanksgiving because that's something I really want to try. But since I only have these ones right now, I'm going to save these. I'm not going to take them out of the shells because I think that, cracking open the shell right before you eat one, to me, it's a lot like eating peanuts or pistachios. I feel like it's part of the process, and if you take them out before you eat them, you lose part of the experience. But hey, that's just me. You might have another idea. Speaking of which, if you do have any other ideas, or you have anything that you've tried, different recipe, different way to cook them, I'd love to try these over a fire where I don't burn the living tar out of them. And if you have any ideas on how to do that better, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'm going to get these tucked away. I might freeze some for later. Now that they're roasted, you can do that. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. Haven't heard anything bad regarding that anywhere I read. So that's what I'll do. The rest of these, I'm probably going to chop up, and I will be putting them on my salads, like I said. I might save a few to toss into a stew if I have some wild game that I'm going to be making, a chili or a pot roast or something with in the near future. If I do that and it turns out well, you guys are going to be the first to know because I will definitely record that and put that on here for you as well, because getting new recipes is one of the main reasons I do things like this. I do some exploring, I do some research, because hey, you got to have good food. The bird just hit the window. Sorry about that. Shh. And the girls didn't like that. Either way, that's all I got for you today. So, like I always say, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.